But when a child dies...
Good morning, Internet, and welcome to some Jubilee today. We're going to be reacting to, what is it called? 1 Atheist versus 25 Christians? Something like that. And it's going to be a ton of fun. I was asked to react to this today. And one of my friends who's a theist wanted to know my thoughts on this, and rather than subjecting myself to torture, I'd rather react to it with you guys.
Makes God's existence unlikely.
Suffering makes God's existence unlikely? I guess. You know what? I'll say this to the claim. Suffering existing makes God's existence unlikely. That's only if the God is good. if the God is good and evil, then that's not a necessarily good claim. In the Old Testament, God says that all I know is Christianity. I know a little bit about the other ones. So Christianity. Okay, so in the Old Testament, God says that He is the creator of all good and all evil. Not Satan. God is the creator of evil. And so, that would his argument wouldn't sufficiently stop that from happening. But anyways, let's get going. I'm going to point out bad arguments from either side. Here we go.
Why don't you just begin? Why is suffering or evil make God's existence unlikely?
I think when confronted with two hypotheses, so atheism, naturalism, or theism, we should ask what we expect would occur under either hypothesis. And then we look at the world and we see what does actually occur. And what do we find? We find, I think most relevant here, a system of natural selection, the mechanism by which God apparently chose to bring animals and ultimately human beings into existence. A system which is defined by suffering. Survival of the fittest is the same thing as the death and suffering and destruction of the unfit. I'm told the very mechanism that God chose to bring about the human species as the ultimate end of his creation was one that is immutable.
If your definition is that God is all good, then yes, then this is a valid argument.
Viewed with suffering such that 99.9% of all the species, let alone animals, that have ever existed on planet Earth have been brutally wiped from existence into extinction.
Yep.
And I think that that's less likely on theism. If you assume atheism or materialism, not only do you explain this, you also come to expect it.
What is your, epistemology? How do you know that this is the case, that it's less likely, and that an atheist worldview, a naturalistic worldview would look like the way it is today?
Of course we don't know, but that's why I use the phraseology of unlikely. I think that if you were to tell somebody who was sort of in some
wait a minute. What the fuck was that guy's question?
Not only do you explain this, you also come to expect it.
What is your epistemology? How do you know that this is the case, that it's less likely, and that an atheist worldview, a naturalistic worldview would look like the way it is today?
Okay, so he's just asking, how would you know that this being the case would be unlikely? And why would a universe without a God be the way it is today? He already basically answered that. It's less likely if a good God exists that there would be bad in just the first place. Which, yes, I would take it a bit further. I wouldn't even say it's less likely. I would say it's incompatible. It's literally impossible if God is only good. So it's weird that people phrase things in such a way that make it sound like it's smarter than it actually is, but then you just break down the question and it's a lot of fluff word salad, and it's just like, how do you know that that's the case? Is what he asked. He just used a bunch more words to say that, and in his opening statement, he already answered that. But okay.
I don't know, but that's why I use the phraseology of unlikely. I think that if you were to tell somebody who was sort of in some Rawlsian state of nature, hadn't seen the world, and you said that the world has been created by an omnibenevolent, all-powerful God, what kind of world would that person be imagining? And if you dropped them into the world, if you were given the opportunity to become a wild animal, like in 2 seconds, I was just going to turn you into a random wild animal somewhere on planet Earth.
I like being a guy.
I think you'd probably kill yourself before I had the opportunity
Okay.
because you know that the life of these animals is almost defined in terms of their suffering.
I guess I just don't really see how you can justify that claim per se. What I would say is that if we actually take into account...
Dude, what are they saying? Okay, so he's saying that if you were turned into an animal, you would likely just kill yourself? What?
Wild animal, like in 2 seconds. I was just going to turn you into a random wild animal somewhere on planet Earth.
I like being a guy.
I think you'd probably kill yourself before I had the opportunity
Okay.
because you know that the life of these animals is almost defined in terms of their suffering.
What the hell kind of an argument is this? That's a big non sequitur if I've ever seen one. They chose, from my impression so far, they chose not a great atheist. And that doesn't mean, oh my god, that doesn't mean that there isn't a God. So he's saying if you were to be turned into just any animal that isn't human, because humans are fucking animals by definition. An animal is anything that's a multicellular eukaryote that has an internal digestive tract. Do you have one of those? Oh, guess what? You're an animal. That's what animals are. If it describes you, it defines you. The end. So he's saying if you're turned into any other animal, that you would just want to kill yourself because otherwise natural selection is going to do it for you? Not necessarily. You could survive. And guess what? You are an animal. And natural selection is working upon you right now. So what is this argument? What is this argument? And saying that is therefore, if there is a God, the God doesn't exist? That fucking... What is... No, bad argument. Bullshit. This dude is an atheist? Question mark. I guess so.
I guess I just don't really see how you can justify that claim per se. What I would say is that if we
justify the claim that if you were turned into an animal, you would kill yourself. I agree. That's stupid.
actually take into account the holistic view of the scriptures, which I do think that you have to do, we see that it's actually much more...
The opposite of science isn't the fucking Bible. You don't... Oh, okay. Just because something is written down doesn't mean it's true. Anyone can write anything down. Okay, we're looking at scriptures because why?
Coherent once you acknowledge that evil itself doesn't have ontology. Evil's not a thing. You don't look under a rock and say, there's the evil, right?
And so I'm not really talking about evil here, because that's, of course, a moral term. I'm talking about suffering.
Can you distinguish suffering and evil?
So evil is a moral term. Evil means that something is bad, it's immoral. You need to have a moral ontology for that. Suffering is just any experience that's not wanted when experienced, right?
I agree with that. If a volcano kills you, there is no evil in that. That just sucks. Evil would have to have a malicious intent. The intent to cause harm. So, volcano does not have intent.
And so, even if you don't have a moral objectivism, you can still say that suffering exists. So here's a question. A deer gets its leg caught under the branch of a tree that's fallen over in the wild, and it starves to death in confused agony. Why does God oversee this? And why does God set the natural world up such that events like this occur?
Well, because the ultimate view here is that...
Okay, pause.
Nice to meet you.
Just let people finish their thought. I was curious what he was going to say to that. My guess, if I were to throw something in the ring, is that it would probably be the cop-out answer of God has a plan, and everything that sucks was part of the plan, and the plan is net good. Therefore, 10,000 children need to starve to death every day. That's net good somehow. So the deer is being caught and then dying is okay, because overall it's going to be a better plan. That's a cop out for unfalsifiability, by the way. You've defined it in such a way to where it can't be falsified. Any amount of suffering, it doesn't matter how much it is, there wouldn't be an amount that would sufficiently say, oh wow, that does really suck. I can't imagine how this would be a net good and be part of God's plan. Literally, the Holocaust will happen, and you'll be like, well, that's part of the plan. So there's no amount of that would be like, maybe there's something wrong with that idea. And if it's unfalsifiable, there's no reason to believe it. And if that's foreign to you, the idea of falsifiability, last Thursdayism is something that's unfalsifiable. The idea that all of the universe was created last Thursday, just the way it is. And is there any way that you can falsify that? No, because anything that you test was placed there last Thursday, and so that's just what it looks like. So you have to believe it because you can't prove it wrong, and that's not how it works. You need a reason to believe it in the first place, not reasons, not believe it because you can't find a way to disprove it. That's not how it works. It doesn't apply to anything. It doesn't apply to this. Good work, you were faster, therefore your arguments are stronger.
What exactly?
Good work, Allison, man. How's it going? Nice to meet you too.
Okay, so my first question to start out with is, what exactly about suffering makes this unlikely on the condition that God exists?
I think that if God is all loving, then he probably wouldn't want his creatures to suffer. And so I think that the fact that they do suffer makes it...
I've already said this. The Bible does not say God is all loving. It says that he is the creator of both good and evil. And I do think a lot of Christians misinterpret that somehow and say he's all good, and he's objectively not. I think drowning the entire earth in Noah's flood is not good.
Existence less likely.
Okay, perfect. And is there some specific aspect of suffering that you're particularly honing in on, horrendous or whatever
In
that is?
particular, non-human animal suffering. Because I think that the Christianity has a celebrated tradition of theodicies trying to explain why suffering exists.
Yeah.
Human free will, the development of the soul, higher order goods, all of this kind of stuff. None of which apply to the suffering of non-human animals.
Have you heard of the axiological expectation
Oh my fucking god. An axiological expectation mismatch problem refers to... Sorry, I gotta move it because my computer monitor is in the way of the screen. Refers to a situation where there is a discrepancy between what someone expects to be good or valuable based off their personal views or beliefs and what they actually observe in the world, leading... Oh, God. And, yeah, because the subtitles are blocking it. Okay. These are personal values and beliefs, what there actually is in the world, leading to a sense of conflict or dissonance. Oh, my God. Situation between expectations to be good. Oh, this is just cognitive dissonance in this very specific good scenario, and it's called axiological expectation mismatch problem. Oh my god, this is so much more complicated. Excuse me, what's being talked about here isn't complicated, but it's being described in such a complicated way that it makes it hard to follow. It's basically just saying, when you expect something that's good and that doesn't happen, wouldn't that make you uncomfortable if you believe that everything is supposed to be good? Yes, that's what cognitive dissonance is. Holy crap.
match problem?
I have not.
Alright, let me put the subtitles back on. He's not heard of this.
Okay, so philosophers of religion
They all laugh.
understand that the thing that actually generates
Like, all of you know what that is!
problem between God and suffering is actually the value system you attach to the very attribute of perfect lovingness. Because the problem of evil is an internal critique, you have to look at a very specific version of theism and how it defines perfect lovingness. I want to present to you a version where my version of perfect lovingness does not actually constitute a problem and a misalignment, that mismatch between the suffering of animals, just to say the profusion of suffering of animals, and the existence of God.
So let's hear it. What kind of God are we imagining that would allow and oversee and do nothing to prevent billions of years of untold animal suffering?
I can answer that. The one that's described in the Bible. The Bible doesn't contradict it. This is awful so far. Why are all these videos that people are like, I want your thoughts on this? They're like always an hour and a half long.
Right. So you're talking about
Not that I don't want you to send me those. I actually really appreciate it because I need more content on this channel. But they're always so long.
prevention.
Or setting up the system that is natural selection, such that it relies upon things like predation and disease.
Well, the first part is I don't agree with the whole setting up the system part. So I'm not one of those theists that believes that God does this select and pick idea of creating worlds. I don't think that God actually creates worlds. I think that God lets worlds develop according in a certain way, but because God can oversee an overarching narrative, he knows exactly how he can redeem anything it goes. So, the first time, sorry.
What? So at first he was describing a deist God, where God sets up the universe, and he's like, that's it, and it's just going to play out. And then he's like, but also he has this narrative, and it's going to be a really good story at the end. I can't tell you. That's the one that I grew up with. That my parents are like, it's all just telling a really good story. It's going to be a really good story at the end. We're all going to die, but like I can't wait for the story when I'm in the magical theme park in heaven. No, it's unfalsifiable. You shouldn't believe something that's unfalsifiable for that reason alone.
Could God have made it such that animals were all herbivores instead of carnivores and omnivores?
Yep. You could have also just made it where they don't need to eat or die at all. You know? You could have just done that.
Okay, so had he done that, here's an instant way to reduce by orders of magnitude the amount of suffering that exists.
Right, but hold on. That's particularly assuming a value theory already that I haven't told you I'm adopting that has a problem with the evil. So I have to give you my value theory first for you to show that misalignment.
Okay, let's hear it.
Perfect. Okay, so my value theory says that it's not the most important thing about a sentient creature is not what merely happens to them. It's about the total timeline of their life and where their life permanently ends. Meaning, if you were to judge an author of a narrative, and the first few chapters, let's say, there's a lot of bad things happening, but the end ends with this crescendo where there's victoriousness, there's redemption, there's beauty, and everyone in the story actually endorses their entire existence that they live. They can look at their total timeline, and they actually each subjectively come to the conclusion, I'm glad I was made, and I totally see what my suffering was for. That's the particular I'm using with. So we have to judge, like John Hicks says, we have to judge the very nature of God's lovingness by what he does in the end, not these few time slices that we observe right now. For you to show that there's a problem,
it's the same thing I've already said. It's just, but what if it's all meant for, it's gonna be a net good in the end. I understand that I had to suffer because somehow in the end it was gonna be good, and there's nothing to back that up at all. But that's the risk. That's a risk I'm willing to take. Oh no, I forgot what you were responding to when you said that. Was it just like how long a video is? Forgot.
you have to show to me that the suffering of animals cannot be transformed, are intrinsically cut off from being transformed into a life that they will endorse. There's a couple of these.
Okay, cool. So what he's now saying is you have to show me that it's now impossible for the negativity of animal suffering to somehow not essentially turn into something that was worth it. This is not how logic works. It is the opposite. So in logic, whenever you're making an argument or anything that's based off of evidence, you need to show evidence for something, not for the person that's holding the opposition to show evidence against. You should not believe something if you don't have good enough reason to believe it. It's not a reasonable request that you should believe something until somebody else proves that what you believe is wrong. Hope that makes sense. It's called the burden of proof. The burden of proof is upon the person making the positive claim, not upon the person to disprove that claim. It was something you said about how you grew up, and I was making a Shrek reference. That's okay. Oh, some of you may die, but that's a risk I'm willing to take. Yes.
He's on the table.
Okay.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So are you talking about the end of their life as in their end of life on Earth, or are you talking about the afterlife?
I'm antemortem, postmortem.
Okay, because if you're just talking about life on Earth, then I would say that if you had an author writing a book and a character, if we were trying to figure out the relationship between that author and the person in the book, and that person in the book shows up for 5 seconds in the first chapter and is a child who almost immediately dies of cancer in an incredibly painful way, and there's no development, there's no sort of bringing back to life and suddenly everyone's grateful for it. It is just this miserable, tragic experience. And I ask, well, what did the author not want to do for the story of the book, but want to do for that character?
Yes.
I think it would be pretty damning. And also, when it comes to animals, we're talking about animals who are predated on from the moment that they begin existence.
Absolutely.
They sort of have disease. Zebras, when they're killed by lions, are often too big to be killed instantly, so they die over minutes with their windpipes caught in the jaws of a lion. Sure. How can this be developing a zebra, which, by the way, probably doesn't even have the same kind of first-person conscious experience that humans do in order to sort of rationalize and abstract and learn from their sort of past and morally develop in that way? They just suffer. And what kind of God could oversee this?
Okay, so there's a lot of assumptions on the table again. Again, you're assuming a particular value system that I'm not laying
I'll tell you
out.
what I'm assuming here. What I'm assuming here is that a good God would not allow unnecessary suffering to obtain.
Okay, gotcha. So we can
do you agree with that?
We can talk about unnecessary suffering. We're talking about the justifying norms for suffering. You're saying it has to be in terms of necessity, which is an evil is only authorizable by God if it's in connection to a greater good or prevention of a greater evil.
This is Christians, right? Yeah. It's one atheist versus 20 of Christians. Okay, so at least we're talking about Christianity, and not just theism altogether. So this now seems weird because at first he was like the opponent was like, no, you are mischaracterizing what I'm saying. He's like, okay, go ahead and say what you need to say. But he basically said the same thing, that like all the suffering could. I don't think he said like will for sure, but it could be for something good overall. And this guy, is it Alex O'Connor? Is that who he is? He's saying, is he saying it's not worth it? I would argue it's not worth it, but I don't know if I missed that part.
Right, there's some
moving
kind of
on.
justification for allowing that.
Yeah, but you're saying it's a necessary connection. What's the term necessity?
So perhaps I should say unjustified instead of unnecessary.
Okay.
There you go.
Agree. I do not believe that God can authorize
Okay, so
justified
tell me
unjustified suffering.
Tell me how that example that I gave you, the deer with its leg starving, is justified.
Because it's intrinsically redeemable, and the norms I'm working with is not this necessity condition that you're working with.
Intrinsically redeemable. What the fuck does that mean? Intrinsically redeemable. Describes a concept where the ability to exchange, restore, or compensate is an essential or fundamental characteristic of a thing or a person. This meaning varies significantly depending on the context, often appearing in finance, motivational psychology, and philosophical or ethical discussions. So I don't think what he's describing here fits that. I think that's a little bit of word salad. Just saying intrinsic doesn't mean that it's true. Like, I don't... Oh my gosh. I'm calling word salad on that one. That one, I Googled it. It doesn't mean the way you're using it. And I don't think you actually know what it means. You wanted to sound smart, opponent.
Mine is about redeemable suffering, redeemability, or what we call defeasability. If that suffering can be defeated within the creature's life, and I'll define what I mean by defeat, which is that they can retroactively look back at what they went through and integrate it into their life history, where they look at their life.
I have to interrupt because the example I gave you is one where the deer dies.
Yes, the deer dies. But here's the thing. Well,
Yeah.
you're probably talking about this post-mortem example. Sure. I'm going to put one thesis on the table. There's two philosophers that defend exactly what this goes through. One defends that animals will be given a martyrdom status, where God will be able to present himself in a way to animals in the afterlife, such that in the same way you could give praise to a dog, and the dog emotionally recognizes that he's loved and that his life is worth living, right? To these animals that suffered like that, there's one view on the table, which is that God will give them a praiseworthy status where they will be able to actually see that.
Can we talk about that claim? Because these animals are suffering for what? I mean, God might cause them to suffer a bunch.
Means to ends.
God might cause them to suffer a bunch and then essentially redeem them in the afterlife. But what for? Like, why do this? If I were to punch you in the face and then give you $20,000 afterwards, you might be grateful for the $20,000.
Yeah.
But why couldn't I just give you the $20,000?
Well, see, so that's assuming. So I saw your debate with Trent.
You've been voted out by the majority.
Awesome,
Please
man.
return to your seat.
Good stuff.
So far, this is really stupid on both ends.
So close. Hey, how's it? Hayden. Nice.
More so the atheist guy.
Say that theism or atheism better account for the idea that suffering exists and a purpose for it.
Depends exactly what you mean. Because
Why is this the talking point?
Itself is more expected on theism, and since suffering, needs the existence of the world, that it's theism. But granted the existence of a material world, let's say, I think atheism.
Okay, why does suffering exist at all? Like in an atheistic worldview, what is the cause of suffering?
Oh, well, because however life began, it developed through a series of natural selection, which requires animals to develop senses that they wish to avoid in order to be more likely to survive. And that's why pain receptors evolve. In a world where not all of these pains are actually going to kill us, we're left with situations in which we're in a lot of pain but don't end up dying for it.
Would you
Thank you for saying that. I was about to say that. I'm like, well, maybe he's going to say exactly what I'm thinking.
agree that consciousness is necessary for suffering?
I would say probably
Yeah.
Does atheism account for consciousness?
Yes, that's
Yes.
what I was talking about a moment ago. Perhaps not. Maybe theism accounts better for consciousness than atheism
Okay.
does.
So if there is no consciousness,
Atheism simply just means that you are not convinced a God exists. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are convinced that a God does not exist. It's taking the status of, I don't know. So, not necessarily. There are some atheists, like myself, who do have the positive conviction that God does not exist. And for that, you do need positive evidence to the contrary. For me, I know that the Christian God is logically impossible. When it comes to just like theism at all, the only one that doesn't completely contradict logic or science would be a deistic God. But even then, there's no evidence for it. There's no reason to believe it, and not having a reason to believe something is a reason to not believe it. Not necessarily to believe that it's false, but every God that has its own religion has enough data points to know that we know that did not happen. And if the God is dependent on those things also being true, then we could say that it's not true. So what the fuck does this have? This is Christianity. This is about atheism versus Christianity specifically. Why aren't we talking about what's actually in the Bible? Why are we talking about suffering? Like, it's like you guys have never read the fucking book. In the book, it says Yahweh is the creator of both good and all evil. That does not contradict suffering. It doesn't. But if you're saying that God is all good, then it does. But Christianity doesn't say that. I know there are a lot of Christians that like to say that God is all good. They're wrong. They haven't read their own fucking book. The Bible is, if I'm taking what the Bible says, it can account for suffering, but not this God is all good shit. No, God is both good and evil. Says the fucking Bible that you guys should be arguing.
there is no suffering. Is that right?
That's probably true, yeah.
So if atheism cannot account for consciousness, then it cannot account for suffering. Would you
Yeah,
agree
so
with that?
Okay, but it does account for both of those things.
Slightly shifting the goalposts. If you don't want to grant the existence of the material world before we start talking about this, we can do an argument from consciousness, but then we need to debate whether consciousness is explicable on atheism. What I'm going to say is this.
Sure.
What I'm going to say is this. Consciousness may seem to imply the existence of a conscious creator of the universe. We're here talking about
Absolutely not.
Christianity.
Absolutely not. I know he's talking about Christianity, but like if it's just a one atheist versus 25 theists, let's say,
On atheism.
whether consciousness is more hold
What I'm
on.
going to say is this. What I'm going to say is this. Consciousness may seem to imply the existence of a conscious.
Okay. This is what I disagree with that the atheist said. Consciousness may seem to imply the existence of a consciousness creator. Absolutely the fuck not. That is a major assumption, that you need a consciousness to create a consciousness. No. If we're breaking down what consciousness is, it's simply just the ability to react to stimulus and make a decision. And the more complex you get as a creature, it's a dial that you're turning up. You get more and more and more and more consciousness, the more things that you can react to. Even a single cell paramecium can be aware that an amoeba has engulfed it and it tries to fight for its life. Even a single cell can do that. I would call that consciousness. So it has to apply to literally all life, as far as I'm concerned. And it's a dial that turns up as you get more and more thinking available. And because of what we know through abiogenesis, that we have reason to believe that life can and does spontaneously arrive. Especially since we have discovered remnants of life on Mars, or remnants of materials that can only have been made by life. So we now have actual evidence of life on Mars. So why would life be both on Earth and Mars when it was all about Earth? We have absolutely no reason to believe that consciousness may seem to imply the existence of a conscious creator. I think he either meant to say, or what would be the correct thing to say, is that many people are fall for the fallacy that if consciousness exists, therefore a consciousness creator needed to create it. Nope, not necessarily. And also, we have all the mechanisms to show how exactly that comes to be when it comes to abiogenesis. So there's no reason that, and no mechanism for how a unbodied mind would be able to manipulate matter to create anything. If a God exists, it should be able to interact with the fundamental forces of nature, which would be the four fundamental forces: gravity, electromagnetism, strong nuclear force, and weak nuclear force. All of those seem to be accounted for in every experiment that we ever do involving classical and quantum physics. If we didn't have something accounted for, then we could say that there would be a space that a God could potentially intervene. But there isn't that. So where the fuck can God do fuck all? There's no spot for them to even exist. And for that reason, I'm confident in saying that a God is physically impossible because it contradicts physics.
Creator of the universe. We're here talking about, I suppose we're talking about Christianity. The claim was about God. But the God that you believe in, let's say, if we grant that there is a creator deity who sort of brings about the universe.
Why are you granting this?
The evil God hypothesis that Stephen Law popularized.
Oh my God! Why are you making me read things? Okay, the evil God hypothesis, as presented by Stephen Law, argues that if the existence of a supremely good God is unlikely due to the presence of evil in the world, then the existence of a supremely evil God should be considered equally unlikely? Wait, unlikely? The supremely good God is unlikely to the present evil. The extremely evil God should be considered equally unlikely. I'm so and the atheist is proposing this. I'm so confused by this. Presented as if the existence of a supremely good God is unlikely due to evil, then the existence of a supremely evil God considered equally unlikely. Because there's good, because there's some good in the world, therefore it can't be all evil. Sure. What I'm so curious where he's going with this talking point. Because like I've already said so many times, the Bible says that God, Yahweh, is both good and evil. Both.
The idea is that, like, imagine that there's a God who brings about the world and creates the world, but does it maliciously because he wants human beings to suffer. He brings about a world in order so that human beings will suffer. Right? That seems like a plausible hypothesis. And even if you think that consciousness points towards God,
just so you know, if you're going to say something is a hypothesis, you need to have a falsifiability criteria. You need a way to be able to test it, to see if it's wrong, if it is. I'm not sure that is a hypothesis, because how would we prove that one wrong? I might be wrong. Maybe it is a hypothesis. So hold on.
A lot of Christians think is a sort of necessary.
Hold on.
Tell me.
So the idea is that, like, imagine that there's a God who brings about the world and creates the world, but does it maliciously because he wants human beings to suffer. He brings about a world in order so that human beings will suffer. Right? That seems like a plausible hypothesis.
Okay. I'm wrong. It is a hypothesis because you would falsify that because there's good in the world, and that would falsify that narrative. See, there we go. I can admit when I'm wrong. And also, that is how hypotheses work. There needs to be a criteria to show that it is wrong if it is. If you cannot do that, then it's unfalsifiable, which makes it not science, which means it doesn't even qualify as a hypothesis.
And even if you think that consciousness points...
Fuck, I did it again. I forgot to put the subtitles back up. Okay.
...towards God. The kind of God that a lot of Christians think is a sort of necessary quality of God, which is to be all-loving, might not have to apply here.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
If Christianity were true, is it plausible that suffering is necessary for God's purpose?
Yes.
Or if Christianity is true, then I think it must be necessary because there'll be no other explanation.
Okay, so we're not talking about whether or not Christianity is true.
But if you're asking me if it's
It should be.
Christianity is true and therefore suffering is necessary, I would say probably not. Because I don't think suffering should be necessary or could be necessary.
In an atheistic worldview, I would agree with you. It makes no sense.
Did the atheist is Alex O'Connor, right? Did he not read the Bible? I don't think any of them in this room read the whole Bible. Maybe they did. But I think they're definitely forgetting the part where God is responsible for both good and evil. It fucking says it in there. What is the... You know what? Just so I have it, because we're coming back to this so many times. Bible quotes... oh my God. Yahweh is the creator of good and evil. It is Isaiah 45:7. There you go. Now you know. I could, I'll just read it. Oh my God! Don't give me a summary. Give me the thing. There we go. Okay, Isaiah 45:6, 45:7, KJV. There is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is none else. I form the light. I create darkness. No, you don't create darkness. Darkness is the absence of light. So God is already wrong there. I make peace and create evil. Okay, that is... I will say that is some liberties on the KJV. By the way, KJV is the worst version. They absolutely... had bad manuscripts, and they just made things up. In most Bibles, I make peace, I create evil is I create good and evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. Let me go to a not stupid version of the Bible. Don't use KJV. Can we... Is there... Come on. Oh my God, can we just... Oh my God. Isaiah 45:7. What are the... Oh my God. Not KJV. Let's do NIV. NIV. Wait. That's not an Abbey. Oh, that is interesting. All right, well, NIV is different. I form the light, create darkness. I bring prosperity and create disaster. That's not what I expected NIV to say. What is it? New Revised Standard Version. Let's do Catholic Edition. Why not? So this is New Revised Standard Version, Catholic Edition. I form light and create darkness. I make weal and create woe. I, the Lord, do all these things. Lots of different versions. Well, I guess the KJV was closest to what I was saying anyways. Jubilee Bible 2000. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I am the Lord that does all this. Whatever. You guys get the point. That's what it says. That's what it says, and you guys are free. Everyone that's in this argument is forgetting this so far.
Okay, I would ask this question.
So can I ask you why, if God exists and wants to come to know everybody, and wants to love everybody, and does so for the sake of human beings, why he chose to imbue the world with so much suffering that is at least seemingly completely inexplicable?
Are you a father?
No.
I'm a father. I want my son to become...
I'm curious if he's even going to answer that question that he just asked.
But, okay, I would ask this question.
So can I ask you why then, if God exists and wants to come to know everybody, and wants to love everybody, and does so for the sake of human beings, why he chose to imbue the world with so much suffering that is at least seemingly completely inexplicable?
Are you a father?
Okay, so he's asking, why did he create the universe and all the people with all of this suffering? So he's asking him if he's a father. Is he, in order for this to be an accurate analogy, is he going to actually say, you're a father? Okay, well, don't you make your children's life difficult because you love them? That would be the only way that this would be an accurate analogy, and that would suck. I'm curious if he's even going to actually properly answer that with an analogy, or say something completely different.
Father?
No.
I'm a father. I want my son to become just like I am, better than I am, I should say. I want him to become the best that he can be. Is it possible for him to reach his potential without suffering in his life?
Perhaps not, but there's
Okay, so suffering is necessary.
There are a few things I want to say.
Okay.
Firstly,
Not necessarily. He said perhaps not. Like, maybe not. Without any suffering. I mean, the fact that, like, pain receptors exist. So without any suffering whatsoever. Let's just say I'll concede that maybe not. So that being said, does that mean that more suffering therefore equals potentially more good? I would say no, definitely not, because then you're just saying, oh, well then therefore we need more suffering because more suffering equals good. No, it doesn't. No, intentional suffering doesn't make good. That is it's a fallacy. I think it's called no pain, no gain fallacy. Something like that. I think that's what it's called. The no pain, no gain fallacy. That's on the master list of logical fallacies.
Non-human animals, as I've already said, right? That does not account for the brutal death of animals in the wild. Also, if I don't want to talk about your son because it's tragic to think about, but somebody else's son has suffered and died immediately as a result of that suffering, they don't get to develop in the same way.
I would
Correct.
agree that on a micro level, it's very hard to justify. And we can ask the question, why doesn't God intervene on all
So
of
look,
these
you might be able to
sufferings?
justify an amount of suffering, right? But the fact that there's so much gratuitous suffering in the world is what I think makes God's existence unlikely. There are some instances where maybe a certain amount of
A good
suffering
God's
brings about a certain amount
existence,
of good in a situation. That, by the way, would count as a
impossible.
justification. But when a child dies of leukemia, and they're
Could
dead,
there be a purpose to it? What if the death of the child brings their parents to God?
then
to
perhaps
salvation?
then the parents should be grateful that their child got leukemia because it's doing the will of the
No,
Lord.
not necessarily.
That seems
All right,
obscene to
pause.
me.
No.
Please return to your.
What about the kid? What if you were the kid? What if you got leukemia and died, and that made your parents better? Well, it sucks for you. No. What? Oh my God! All right, well, let's break this down. That's not just, right? Like, you understand that that's not just. That even a net good. Let's say somehow you dying brought your parents prosperity. That's not what justice is. Right? Like, even then a net good isn't justice. It's just a net good. Like, if America could argue, and I'm not even arguing this, that nuking Japan twice was a net good because it stopped World War II. Like, yeah, but that's not justice. It shouldn't have had to come to that. I don't know what the answer could have been. I think that would be an interesting trolley problem. But yeah, not advocating for that. So, anyways, yeah, no, that's not justice. And and if God was the creator of everything and knew every like possible chess play scenario that they could do, you could have came up with a better version of like it's true. Like, why even have suffering at all if God is all good? Also, in Christianity, which is what we're arguing, the Bible doesn't even say that. So,
You could say Domino's.
oh my God, no. That Domino's does look good though. Who wants Domino's? I would love Domino's right now. That sounds so good. I got some snacks. I have peach rings. I have Fritos, chili cheese flavored corn chips. That's what I have. Oh my gosh. This is why I gotta do these reactions like this. Because they're just so long. And also, I am grateful to Jubilee for not immediately banning my live stream. Thank you for doing that. Peach rings, yes. Yes.
Hey, how's it going?
Awesome. I would love to pull back a little bit.
Sure.
And ask you, what are your values kind of rooted in and grounded in? Where would we start?
So I'm an ethical emotivist, which
Alright, I already know where this is going. And it's such a classical talking point that you get all your morals from God, and that's the end of it. And if God says it, it's good, and if he says it's bad, it's bad. That's called divine command theory. There's a little bit more to it than that. Basically, like, God can change his mind and it's still okay. No, our sense of morality is evolved. He's probably going to say this, but I'll just say my opinion now. Our sense of morality is evolved, even in chimpanzees. When they find somebody is stealing food from one another, they will typically either shun them, reject them, or they'll just murder them. And if they get murdered, then they can't pass on that selfishness trait, whatever part of them was in their brain that caused them to be selfish. They're probably not passing it on to any kids if they're dead. So It's literally negatively selected for in a population. And same with humans. When there's too many people that are selfish and they're like, "Hey, let them eat cake," we tend to unalive them pretty quickly. So yeah, that is a trait. And we're like, "Well, Bryce, that's nurture, not nature." They're part of the same thing. Your brain is all nature. And your ability to learn and take in information and think about it rationally is also part of nature. So how you learn information is different for everybody. That's what, we learn about the autism spectrum, right? And everything, all different learning capabilities. I was raised under the same roof as my sister. My sister was theist for a long time. I was basically atheist right out the gate. So it's not, that's not really how it works. I'm probably more autistic than my sister. So anyways, also in behavior is absolutely part of nature. When we are selecting animals, like for example, when we domesticated dogs, we only bred the ones that were more friendly. And then we didn't breed the ones that were more mean. And so we just got more and more friendly wolves over time. Then eventually they became the puppy dogs that we all love, right? So, behavior is absolutely part of nature as well. Just letting you know.
Which is a form of ethical non-cognitivism. I don't think that ethical claims have truth value. I think they're expressions of emotion.
If we're pulling back a little bit, I remember reading at the end of Richard Dawkins' book, The God Delusion, that we can't trust our senses because evolution doesn't really care about making truth claims. It cares about surviving.
I don't know.
Do you agree with that?
I don't think Dawkins actually endorsed that argument, but it's a good argument. C.S. Lewis, Alvin Plantinga, the argument from reason, sure.
Well, would you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I mean, I remain agnostic on what reason is, but I think it's a powerful argument.
Well, when it comes to determining if suffering is wrong or right...
So, okay, so crucially, I'm not saying that suffering is morally wrong. Outside of the senses that I as a motivist would just express an emotion towards it, that we don't like it. I'm not claiming that it's immoral, that it's objectively bad.
Oh my god, there's so much happening. I want to just let it play and then just talk over it. But also, I feel like YouTube copyright's going to get in the way of that. Oh my fucking god. I would agree that suffering is bad. I don't. Why is he like? I'm not so sure about that one. What? Of course it's bad. We should try our best to try to get rid of it as much as possible. All right, let's just keep going.
Unexpected on theism. It's an internal critique, right? Lincoln said of slavery, if this is not wrong, then nothing is wrong. You don't have to believe that something's wrong, right. But if there is such a thing as objective morality...
I don't recall Lincoln ever saying that.
...who oversees the amount of suffering that we have on planet Earth.
Timothy Keller...
Did he say that?
No-see-ums. Have you heard of the no-see-um story?
No.
Yeah, so he says...
And also that's a fallacy.
And you look in there and you say, hey, I think I have some dogs on the tent. Maybe, like, for example, I have a golden doodle. He's a killer. That was just a joke, but we can move on. And if I say, hey, I have a golden doodle inside the tent, you would expect to see one. But if I said, hey, there's some no-see-ums. These little gnats are so tiny they actually go through the screen.
Sure.
He says, there's some no-see-ums in the tent. You might look in there and go, I don't see any no-see-ums. But of course you don't see no-see-ums because nobody can see them.
Okay, so...
Just because there's maybe not a reason that we can identify doesn't mean that there can't be a reason. Now, it's kind of cold comfort. That doesn't get...
Is he actually saying that because you can't see the invisible God doesn't mean he's not there? I guess, but we would still have evidence of those things existing. Whatever, forget which one he said, but they're like some kind of not microscopic, but so small creatures that you can't actually see them. We would still see evidence of them there if we actually tested it. Even if you can't see with the naked eye, doesn't mean it's necessarily not there. But you would still have evidence for it, and there is no evidence for God at all. So, like, that's the big problem. You can't see gravity either, but we have evidence for it. There's no evidence for God at all. The only thing that we have is falsehoods, frauds, and fallacies. It's all you have, 100%. Every single time I've ever heard it, it's always one of those. And because I've been studying logical fallacies, I can point out which fucking fallacy it is.
It is 100% of the way there, but it gets part of the way there.
That's true. So the existence of evil is not logically, or suffering is not logically incompatible with God's existence. But it's a bit like if somebody came up to me right now and stole my friend's wallet in front of me and shot him dead and ran away, and I was grieving, and somebody said to me, well, hey man, you don't know, that person might have worked for the CIA, and your friend might have secretly been harboring the nuclear codes, and killing him might have been good for the country, and he stole the wallet because that's what the codes were. And I would say, well, what evidence do you have for that? And you say, well, look, just because I don't have evidence for it doesn't mean that there might not be some evidence that I don't know about. I would say, until I see why I should think that's the case, I'm not going to believe it, and I'm certainly not going to be less upset in my grieving over my people.
Yes, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. It's much more likely in that scenario that that person just wanted money and they shot him and killed him, right? That happens all the time. The other scenario is very unlikely, and there should be a significant amount of evidence for that. So, yeah, it's like the when the Trump administration shot that boat just for absolutely no reason, and people are like, you don't know if he had drugs or not. Okay, well, even if he had drugs, like, you should have done something else. Stupid.
Because of the possibility that there could be an explanation for it. There's so much suffering imbued in the human experience that if somebody says, well, look, there could be an explanation, it's like, okay, fine, but let me know when you know what it is.
I'll agree that. I think the thing
All
that's
right,
hard.
pause. You've been voted out by the majority. Please return to your
Sorry,
seats.
more
Hey,
time.
that's right. Thank you.
Get on. Hey, nice to meet you. How are you?
Good. Repeat your claim one more time.
That suffering is unexpected if a good God exists.
Unexpected.
Mhm.
So when you say unexpected, like you're caught off guard by it, or you're expecting like all good things to happen.
That if I assume that there is a
The latter.
God supervising, vigilating the universe, that I would not expect to see so much suffering.
Right.
So
And
much gratuitous, seemingly unnecessary suffering.
right. And you know, the most beautiful thing is that our God is not unfamiliar with suffering, as he suffered himself. So would you say that there is like some beauty in suffering in some way?
No.
I would say that there can be sort of poetically, you can look at suffering and think that's a beautiful story, but I don't think that...
This is the Trinitarian view that Yahweh and Jesus are the same person, which a lot of Christianity does believe. Just so you know, that is a church tradition. Nowhere in the Bible does it actually say that. In fact, everywhere in the Bible that has Jesus talking about God the Father, he's always talking about somebody else, somewhere else, praying to him about things that God doesn't know, or he's asking that God's about things that Jesus doesn't know. They are different people. Nowhere in the Bible do they ever say that they are all the same thing. The only place in the Bible that I think that the Trinitarian view came from was something like way later. I could probably find the quote. But it was like somebody was saying, I think it was like about Jesus, or maybe, I don't think it was Jesus actually saying it. But it was like Jesus alluding to, or somebody saying that Jesus said that him and the Father are now one after like he went to heaven. And you could very easily just assume that means, oh, they are in the same place. They at the same time. In the same way that you could be, like when Jesus says, like, in order to be one with Yahweh, you have to be one, like, with Him. And that doesn't mean that you become God. That doesn't mean you become part of the Trinity. It just means that you are with Him in the afterlife, right? And that's what that means. To my understanding, that's what they meant by it when they said that we are one. Not that they're literally the same thing. And then that would also imply that they weren't in together in the Trinity at all times. They were always different. So let's see. The Father and I are one. Bible quote. I'm just gonna see if I can find where that is. I and my Father are one is a key biblical verse found in John 10:30. Where Jesus claims direct unity with God the Father in essence, power, and nature. And then this is used to explain the Trinity. Yeah, I think that's a bit of a fucking stretch to then assume the entire Trinity. To my understanding. Stream unavailable? Oh, no. Oh, no. I was copyrighted. Oh no.